the University of Nairobi plans to launch the first East African museum of sorts. Maybe you can start by telling us about that.
Well, I think it's long overdue. If you travel today in most areas of Africa, there are fantastic museums that celebrate African contemporary art. In South Africa, if one visits somewhere like Cape Town, there are 2 world-class museums that celebrate the very best of South African art. And same is happening in North Africa, West Africa, there are plans. And East Africa, we hope that we can put that right. And we feel that Nairobi would be a really good place for that to begin to be to change.
And what is the exact plan? What do you want to put at that museum, and what kind of pieces are you looking for to put there?
Well, what I would love to see, I'm the director of the National Museum of African Art in Washington, as part of the Smithsonian, and we would love a world-class museum that we could have a peer relationship with, that we could exchange materials and expertise, because this region, it's produced some of the most important artists, some of the most incredible art, and yet there isn't an institution that we can interface with, and we would love for this region to put that right.
Dr. Ndemo, you've been around for quite some time now, that's because you've been able to follow the matters, the nation. You have also been in government previously. And when you look at the situation in the country and how we appreciate art, how we preserve it in the museums that we have, or the art galleries that we have, how can you rate us in terms of preserving it? What would be important, considered important from our heritage?
Thanks for the question. What we have at the moment is the Museum of Natural History. That's the National Museum. And the art galleries have been trying to collect some of these art pieces and stuff. As Gus says, we don't have a world-class museum of art, and yet we have so many young people expressing their culture through art that we don't have a place to put them. And we find that our art is most underrated in Africa because we don't have a place to begin to start the discourse around the East African art. West African art, because it's been there for a long time, is what you see all over the place. And the other aspect is that we needed the universities to begin to think about art subjects because the School of Design would need such, the other schools of art would be very much interested to study there.
Right.
We don't have a school for curation in the whole of Africa, and yet we are seeing a lot of African art coming out. So this is going to be a place for research, a place for developing capacity in these areas. That's why we thought about having it at the University of Nairobi.
And Dr. Amelina, you have worked in Tanzania in creating one of the museums there. And when you were going through that journey, you told me that you've been in Kenya for 2 years now. When you're going through that journey, establishing what now Tanzania has, what were you looking out for, and how can Kenyans now start to appreciate that there are actually certain things that they hold ordinary, but they belong somewhere else for preservation?
Thank you very much. This is indeed a great question. And indeed, the first country I lived in East Africa, had the great fortune living in East Africa, was Tanzania. And we worked very closely with the National Museum of Tanzania, helping the Directorate of National Museum to create the Lilanga Courtyard, a courtyard named after a great Tanzanian artist, Lilanga. So yes, there I started to appreciate the wealth and depth and underrated nature of East African art, and the fact that institutions that exist, wonderful as they are not equivalent to the art that this part of the region can offer and does offer. But when I came to Kenya, I was extremely joyed truly to see the civil society that's very vibrant and is actually very open to the idea and to the need of preserving that aspect of self-identity. Because I met great artists, I met great gallery owners, I met very forward-looking leadership at the University of Nairobi. So in terms of the institutional setup, the opportunities for such a world-class institution in Nairobi are huge. And in 2 years, I was very happy to see that and to having the opportunity to work with that to some extent.
Dr. Ndemo, before I get back to Gus here, when you walk on the streets and speak to the average Kenyan, most of them do not appreciate the place of what we are talking about. Quite a number of them will tell you they have not been to the museums of Kenya unless they went when they were in school. They have not visited the archives. They have not visited the several sites, heritage sites that we have across the country. And part of it is because of how they have been socialized, but also they don't see the value. So how do we ensure, even as we go the extra mile to establish something that is East African, how do you ensure that whatever we have in our heritage sites, in our museums, is of use to us, not just to the academicians?
Actually, it's not true. A lot of Kenyans appreciate art. And I've been meeting so many young people coming up with beautiful art, but they don't have a place where to showcase that. So you've actually been seeing different parts of our art being exhibited outside of this part of the world because people assume there is no culture for going to museums.
Do you think it's there?
There is a culture for this. People have art pieces in their homes. People are doing art. You can't be having a lot of these pieces being done if people don't appreciate the art. And once we have a place where people know that these art pieces are here and begin to develop capacity in terms of curation in this part of the world, then you would get a much wider what you are looking for. But we have people who could be going to museums. When I went to Abu Dhabi, there were so many Kenyans wanting to go and see the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. These are people who are hungry for such space in this part, but they were not able to see it. When you travel to Zait's Museum in South Africa, you find Kenyans in there. This is the population that you don't see, and you can't see it until you create space for that. Right. Yes.
The Smithsonian, if I got that correct, a system of museums is quite elaborate. I think I saw the one on the history of the aeroplane.
The air and space.
Yes. So it's quite big there, and every person who goes there, including ourselves, we get there and you get excited, you want to see it. So how do you help create that culture in Kenyan population or East African population, even as you establish what now you have already visualized?
Well, our museum, every year we celebrate a single artist who we feel has made a significant contribution to world culture. And this year it was a Kenyan. The contribution of Kenyan artists to world culture is enormous. And I think if we build a world-class museum, something that is a real architectural statement, and we fill it with world-class art from the whole region, and we tell that story confidently, as has been proven all over the world in museums like Tate or the Guggenheim, they generate new audiences and excitement. I don't just mean local audiences. This will be an international phenomenon that people will be coming from all around the world. If I think of Kenya through the lens of a European or a North American, I think of traveling here to come and see the wildlife. We want to reconfigure people's expectations. They need to be thinking about this as a destination of culture.
And as a scholar, how then do you achieve what he has said in terms of the foreigners, people outside the continent, how do you also achieve from the local populace that we have here, they also become consumers of the same products that we have at these museums?
Well, as my colleagues here, Professor Ndemo and Gus, I think that this audience already exists. It's just below the radar screen of much of the institutions and maybe even TV, because spaces are not as glorious as the art that exists. So I think there won't be problem. We just have driven through the campus of the Nairobi University. These are the students that look exactly like students in Berkeley or any other big universities. I talk to them, they want art. So I think the audiences, the problem will not be there if, as Professor Ndemo said, there will be good curation that will not speak down to people yet make accessible, interesting exhibitions. And to create an institution, you know, you need, I think, a couple of very key ingredients in that salad. You need a great institution to host it, like a leading university in East Africa. You need a wonderful partner, like one of the great museums. And you need, of course, private sector to support it with funding. And above all, you need the buy-in and the support of the community that should feel that it's their museum, that is not something up there on the hill, that it's something where you can go during a lunch break to just reconnect to yourself and to your identity.
And finally, Gus, you will be leading a discussion this evening at the University of Nairobi to talk about the exact discussion you're having here. As moving forward, maybe you can tell us briefly about that as we conclude.
Well, it's to engage with a variety of different constituencies in thinking about this possibility. Imagine if a truly world-class museum that celebrated the arts of this region across more than a millennia, if that was here, how it would transform this nation, this region, and our sense of ourselves. I mean, for me, that's an exciting proposition.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bitange Ndemo, Dr. Gus, and Dr. Amelina for coming through to talk about that. And of course, that event begins at 4:30 p.m. at the University of Nairobi, having a discussion led by some of these who are here, as well as the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism, Najib Balala, and some other leaders.
We didn't say about the tourism aspect that most
yes, briefly, just in under a minute.
Most tourists who travel, and this is from research, I did an article yesterday, more than 50% want to understand the culture of a certain place. And as Gus has said, our story is not about animals. We need to flip that aside and say we have a culture. This is our culture here. And that would also increase the number of tourists coming into this part of the world. It happened in Abu Dhabi that the tourism went jumped by several hundred thousands of people by just introducing that aspect. And we are going to see the same in this country. As soon as we are through with it, you will be seeing a lot more tourists coming because they want to know how we live our culture and the stuff through art.